little by little, I realized, my God, I got whores living across the street and the drug dealers next door. What have I got myself into?
That's the voice of Anthony DiBenedetto, who purchased a property at 21 East Parmentor Street in 1992. He ignored the abandoned houses towards the block's west end, buying the property, gutting it, and rebuilding based on his own design. What he bought into was a stretch of misery.
My house down was just a trash area, and even from my house up, we had some trash too.
In those days, drug dealers roamed Parmentor's darkened streets, and addicts retreated inside the abandoned houses to get high. 16 years after DiBenedetto purchased his home, Habitat for Humanity of Greater Newburgh started the process of radically remaking the crime and drug-infested street near Washington's headquarters. For years, the organization and its army of volunteers had been turning rundown properties across Newburgh's East End into homes to be purchased by residents.
We did sites scattered throughout, even if it's still within census tracts 4 and 5, that while the impact for the families is always going to be there, that the impact for the community was not as great.
But the decision to demolish Parmentor Street's blighted properties and replace them with new single-family homes represented a philosophical shift for Habitat.
It's like if you throw a pebble into a pond, the ripples are very small. You throw a bigger, more like a large stone, and those ripple out effects are much larger. And so the scattered sites are little pebbles. A neighborhood is a big, big stone.
Current Newburgh Planning and Development Director Deirdre Glenn led the organization when they discovered East Parmentor. She remembers how they found a ravaged and boarded up mix of city-owned and privately owned properties.
There was somebody camping out there, had his kids in a tent in the yard. There were snakes, there were rats.
Most of the buildings had been destroyed by fire, and all had been without electric and running water for years.
All of the buildings had had multiple fires in them. There had been no water or electric to any of these buildings since 1980. Shootings, and people would pour out of the bar and go down the street to have it out,
For Warren and Stephanie Foucher, who described life on Carter Street before moving, the renaissance of Parmentor Street was life-changing.
I had a hazard. It was a big hazard because I had like 15 extension cords running throughout the whole house. It also had mold in the one closet that it did have. Other than the abandoned houses at the corner, it was the darkest street in the world. We were scared to go. We call this the S. Everybody who's from Newburgh calls this the S. It was dark. It was scary to be over here.
The Fouchers joined 4 other families in becoming the first new residents of East Parmentor after Habitat completed the first phase. Stephanie cried as she and her husband received the keys to 40 Parmentor Street during a ceremony in April 2010.
It was just something that was so out of reach for the both of us, I would say, that when it did come through, the gratitude, the accomplishment that we felt at that time, we just appreciate everything that Habitat did for us.
I think a lot of people just in Newburgh, they just, like I said before, they feel hopeless, a sense of hopelessness, and feeling like they're never going to get out of here. There's never going to be a better way. It's, like a dead end, But when somebody brings hope into the community, people tend to latch on, and it works.
Anthony DiBenedetto relishes the changes as well. He has discovered Newburgh's growing fraternity of artists and professionals while hanging out at Martha, the nearby cafe on Liberty Street.
I've had a whole new life change by meeting people there that are in the arts, architects and painters and writers.
Habitat's shift in focus was the belief that remaking a single block, rather than doing projects scattered around the city, could have more impact.
When you're dealing with such deep issues in a community, to spread it out so thin, you're not concentrating enough to be able to isolate it and move it out.
In a city where grand plans often die quickly, the idea of re-energizing a whole area by transforming blocks at a time is spreading.
We're looking at, on the other side of Broadway, the Chambers, Landers, Johnston corridor, but really helping with that process over there. That the land bank, and part of our interest in that is that the land bank is doing work, and that is their core area.
Ironically, it's nonprofits who are working to create a renaissance in the city where multi-million-dollar ideas from private developers have failed for a variety of reasons.
It's worth testing. it's worth seeing if we do go about a different approach to housing, and if we could flip some of it into a greater percentage of home ownership, does that create a certain amount of inertia that would result in people looking at the city differently?
North of Broadway, stretches of Chambers, Du Bois, Lander, and Johnston Streets are being targeted for redevelopment by the Land Bank and a group of partners that includes Habitat and Rubco. While those plans are being put into play, Pattern for Progress has been researching the failures of previous grand plans and working on a strategy for remaking the Hudson Valley's urban areas.
And if you want people to no longer be a burden upon the resources that are given to people in a community, then you have to take some risk somewhere. And for us, we think that ensuring that everyone has a decent place to live is a good risk to take. Everyone is entitled to a decent place to live.
For Record Online, I'm Eric Liedman.